Would you lead us, please?
Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day that you've given us, this time we have to come together, to open your word, to look into your knowledge, to help increase our knowledge. Father, be with Brother Jimmy this morning as he presents things he's prepared. Be with all of our teachers and all of our classes. We may glorify your name. We ask these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. We're studying in, I think we left off Wednesday in Daniel, the 10th chapter. We'll skip down to verse 10. I think we had read this, but we'll come back. Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. While he was speaking the word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I have been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Now I've come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision refers to many days yet to come. When he had spoken such words to me, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless. And suddenly one having the likeness of the sons of men touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke, saying to him who stood before me, My Lord, because of the vision, my sorrows have overwhelmed me, and I have retained no strength. For how can this servant of my Lord talk with you, my Lord? As for me, no strength remains in me now, nor is any breath left in me. Then again, the one having the likeness of a man touched me and strengthened me. And he said, O man greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be to you. Be strong. Yes, be strong. So when he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I've gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds me against these except Michael, your prince. Now we talked already about some of that. I wanted to pick up, I think, with the thought that we had, I just brought up and introduced Wednesday night. And I drew this, I think, from McGigan, but I think he's right. This is one of the few times, it seems to me, in the Bible, Revelation likewise, where a curtain is drawn back and we get a view of a great conflict that's going on that we're probably not typically mindful of. We understand that Satan is our great enemy. We understand that we're fighting him. We tend to not be aware of this great spiritual warfare that's going on all around us. And apparently, based on this, based on a few other verses, there is a terrific warfare going on between the forces of good and the forces of evil. We're going to touch a little bit on that as we go forward. Not trying to make more of that. That was part of the overarching things that are told to Daniel. It's not everything. It's probably not even the main thrust. But it's important. Why is it important for us to understand that God is involved in our lives and in the things that happen in this world. All right?
Well, if we didn't appreciate God's presence, we can become very disenchanted and not really appreciate, again, and fully receive the blessings that He gives us in this world, be able to take advantage of those, but also be more aware of what's going on around us on a daily basis. Every choice we make is either going to draw us nearer to Him or further away. And if we don't acknowledge His presence, why do we want to be nearer Him?
Right.
It's also the promise of an eternity with Him
Right.
that we look forward to as well.
Good points. Important that we acknowledge Him, that we know Him, that we appreciate what He's doing for us. Important that we know that we're not in this battle by ourselves, and that this is a great battle, and that it is a battle that is not just physical in nature. It's a battle that is spiritual in nature. We see the physical consequences of it, but in truth, it is a spiritual battle. You had something, Carl? Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. Thank you.
There is great strength available to each of us, knowing that we have a God, and that if we are faithful to Him, that He is on our side. And no matter what happens to us in this physical world, there will always be heaven for us.
Right. Down at the bottom of this, he's going to go a step further. He's going to say, "Your angel Michael." That's pretty exciting, isn't it? To think that there are angels who are concerned about us. I'm not trying to get way out there and teach a bunch of angelology, but also I've been guilty of under reading that and understanding that until fairly recently, and so it's come home to me and realized that there's a lot more going on. So the curtain's drawn. We have the spiritual forces of good and the force of evil that began in Eden and have continued on and will continue on to the victory of Christ in Revelations, the 12th chapter, 7 through 12. Here we're talking about the conflict with the world kingdoms of Persia and Greece. Again, let's back up. So Persia comes into our view in the Bible. Why?
They defeated the Babylonians.
All right, and why was that? Why did that have to happen?
Well, we have to go through the four kingdoms that were listed in the dream that Daniel interpreted for Nebuchadnezzar. And so we had the Babylonian Empire, and we have the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans.
Okay.
And all of this has to do with the people returning to Israel for the 70 years and for a future for us.
Lynn, and I'm going to summarize, said that Persia came to defeat the Babylonians in keeping with what God had told us would happen. Ultimately, this leads back to the children of Israel being returned to the land as promised after 70 years. This is fulfilling God's commandments. He used Babylon to punish Judah for her sins, but now Babylon must be punished for her sins, so now Persia is going to be used. And then Persia needs to be punished for her sins, so Greece is going to be used. And then Greece has got to be punished for its sins, so Rome's going to be used. And then, believe it or not, Rome ultimately is punished as well. But that's outside of at least the history of the Bible as far as when that occurs. So these conflicts are God's using kingdoms and then using them to carry out His will. He foretold Cyrus would allow the people to return. This is in accordance. Now we could, and I'm not going to go there, but we could get into the question. Well, Cyrus didn't have any choice about it. Judah Judas didn't have any choice. No, they did. God sees all of history, and He knows what's going to happen. He didn't make it happen. But nonetheless, these people are used. He didn't in the sense of no choice on their part. He certainly caused and nudged and prodded to get people. I suppose. I don't know God's way God acts, so I shouldn't even be presupposing. But nonetheless, so we have these conflicts, these worldwide empires. These are mighty empires. These are incredible empires compared to anything that had been seen. So part of this is this conflict ongoing. The worship, and he makes the point, the worship and sacrifices to idols means to have communion with the demon spirits or fallen angels, which they represent. So I'd always thought of idols as just being empty, but at least in some instances, McGicken thinks that they may have been prompted by fallen angels or by demon spirits or others. 1 Corinthians 10, 19 through 21. All right. Paul also said, and think about this, Ephesians 6:12, our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual host of wickedness in the heavenly places. Well, how can I hope to be successful against these terrific, mighty spiritual forces? But God tells us. In fact, He says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. So we have power that we don't realize in a spiritual sense, but we also know that we have God's help and assistance to us. And finally, anybody have any comments on that? All right. Finally, he said, I've been left alone with the kings of Persia. And that may well have been talking about the subordinate kings, some of those. They quite often, they would have what they would call, sometimes we call kings, but they wouldn't be the real, what we would consider the king, but they would be subordinate kings over provinces, over portions of the kingdom. Let's see, maybe I didn't click in. There we go, just a minute. Got too many. All right. So, here's where I was going to come to, and then we'll kind of move on through. But so we talk about worldview a lot, and we tend to get roped in, and we tend to really think about that just in terms of the physical world round about us. In truth, the correct worldview that encompasses as well the physical things about us is there's a conflict between good and evil. It began at some time before creation when there was a rebellion in heaven. This is kind of reading and understanding inferences, but probably right. Led by a high-ranking angel, later called the great dragon, the souled serpent, the devil, and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. The evil Satan, think about it, was necessary. Why was he necessary? Why was Satan necessary on this earth? He tempts us. He gives us the ability to be tempted. If there had been no temptation in this world, then man would have possibly just gone right on through with never knowing that he had any choices or anything else. I'm sure it would have occurred some other way, but the purpose is, he serves the purpose of the temptation of man to provide a choice between good and evil. So apparently God called a council, pronounced an enmity between Satan and his seed, the woman and her seed, the great spiritual warfare symbolized in Revelation, misspelled Michael, by Michael and his angels warring against the dragon and his angels. This is the same thing, and that's why we keep going over to Revelations from Daniel, because there are similarities, and certainly there's a parallel in understanding the spiritual warfare that is going on. So, who is the prince of the kingdom of Persia? I put some thoughts up. I don't know that we know for sure, but apparently it would seem some wicked, angelic, or demonic being, an evil spirit, which is at the back of the kingdom of Persia. Now remember, it seems like it's almost a push from both sides, that maybe there's good fighting, and whether it's fighting to influence the leaders of Persia or whether it's directly fighting against each other, I suspect it's more in the battle to try to influence human behavior and where that's coming from. But that's just a supposing on my part. Somebody, though, is fighting on an angelic or demonic level against angels or agents of God, whether it be a direct battle ongoing or whether it be forces trying to push and pull human forces in different directions. So there's a battle going on. We don't get into details, but they do contend, and that's reminded, I just noticed some of the passages, Hebrews 1:14, Ephesians 6:10, Matthew 18:10. All right, I'm not wanting to overplay that, but I'm just trying to lay out. Now, let's talk about just for a minute what that does with Daniel. As a reminder, what was Daniel primarily interested in? He wanted to know what?
Was it the time for them to return to?
Okay. He knew from Isaiah that it was about 70 years, and he knew they were getting close. Okay. He was concerned about his people. Were they going to be able to go back? Because they weren't still very faithful to God. They were not morally where they should be. He was concerned about that. And I think he doesn't directly say it, but it seems all the other Jews did, even to the time of Christ. They want to know when the kingdom would be restored. It was going to be an eternal kingdom, right? And there's that continued misunderstanding of what that eternal kingdom was, carried on even to the New Testament time, and even to the point when the apostles were asking Jesus at this time that the kingdom would be restored. So those are things that he's working. Now, all of a sudden he gets enveloped in this, all these angels and warfare going on and all this other. And I think that's to raise his awareness of this isn't just humans. This is a push-pull. Did you have a thought on that?
I'm just thinking about the First Peter, actually Second Peter, where it talks about that God did not spare angels for their
Yes.
sin, but cast them into hell. So you have the ministering angels in behalf of saints, Hebrews chapter 1.
Right.
You've got that. Anytime that you have a force in Scripture, you have a counterforce.
That's right.
We don't know what's going on there, but something is going on. And what's at stake is us.
Yes.
But there's something going on.
Excellent. And the passages are really, really good. So angels were cast down that from heaven, okay, because they rebelled. All right, and we know that we have ministering angels as well. And so the point that he's making is each one of us is getting influenced from either direction. So we may not realize it, but we need to be aware of it and very mindful. Was I fair on my summary? Not so much.
My point is it's being contested.
Yes, and being contested. I'm sorry.
Point. It's being contested on earth, it's being contested in
Yeah.
the heavenly realm.
I got you.
We don't have a whole lot of insight about the heavenly realm, but he's making the point that it is being contested.
That it is being contested both on earth and in the heavenly realm. Good, excellent points. And I'm trying to repeat, and sometimes I don't get it right. So I thought I had missed something on that. I did. All right. All right, so let's move on to that next. So, in fact, actually, you got just ahead of me on the next, but that's fine. All right, so Matthew 18:10, take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. And then Hebrews 13:2, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing some have unwittingly entertained angels. I don't see any reason it puts that in the past, but the warning is be careful to not how you entertain that you do, excuse me, because in the past people have unwittingly entertained angels. I think that presupposes that we too may entertain unwittingly angels. So, and of course, 6 and 12, the rulers of the darkness of this age, the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places, quenching all the fiery darts of the wicked one. These are all passages we're familiar with. To me, it's coming home more in this study of Daniel. I hope I'm not boring you or leading you astray. All right. So I think we'd read, let's see. No, this is the rest of it. Okay. And when he had spoken unto me according to these words, I set my face toward the ground and was dumb. And behold, one in the likeness of the sons of men touched my lips, and opened my mouth, and I spake, and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I retain no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? For as for me, straightway there remained no strength in me, neither was a breath left in me. Then there touched me again one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me. And he said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto thee. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he spake unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I am come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I go forth, lo, the prince of Greece shall come. But I will tell thee that which is inscribed in the writing of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me against these, but Michael your prince. All right. Well, he's repeating himself a little bit, isn't he, on what had already been said. But Daniel has a reaction. He goes to his face on the ground, and he's dumb. I mean, he's just senseless. This is overwhelming. Look at what had just happened. God had heard his prayer, responded by immediately sending a majestic. Remember what? Fiery swords. I mean, all sorts of. I mean, this was a remarkable individual, an awe-inspiring heavenly messenger to grant his petition. The angel's description of the unseen spiritual warfare that was waged shocked him, and the mutual help of God's angels, one for another, probably overwhelmed him. Now his desire was to be granted knowledge of what shall befall his people in the latter days, and at this stage, that may have been somewhat terrifying. There may have been more in the message than have been stated. It may have included knowledge about the difficulties that were faced or were going to be faced by the newly returned remnant disclosed in Ezra and Nehemiah. Remember what happened with them. Remember they said They will do so, they'll rebuild, but in troublesome times, and maybe that was reiterated. We know that they built the altar in the first year, laid the foundation of the temple in the second year. Then from then on they were hindered from continuing, for fear was upon them because of the peoples of the countries, Ezra 3, 2-3, 8 and 10. They continued from then on to be hounded from time to time by the neighboring enemies. That's even in just trying to do what God intended for them to do, and that was to complete the walls and complete the temple. The sorrows he talks about were pangs, and that occurs, that word also in Isaiah 13:8, a sudden sharp feeling of pain or distress so severe that it left him weak and breathless. He probably thought he was having a heart attack if he knew what a heart attack was. It was just completely overwhelming. And then the message of one that, like the appearance of a man, touched him, and the man greatly spoke to him, said, "O man, greatly beloved." Now that's the third time that we've heard that term, "O man, greatly beloved." So that really comes home. And then he said, "Peace be to you." That's shalom. And I guess, as I remember, the Hebrew doesn't have vowels, and so that has to be filled in. But shalom, to be strong. I want you to note, though, that, and I'm a little bit of an aside, but it is interesting. So, it means peace, peace be to you, but it's really a state of completeness and fulfillment, wholeness and unity, a restored relationship, particularly a restored relationship with God. So I think it's very appropriate, peace be to you, especially when you mean that, because that means that we are balanced, that we're living life completely and in a fulfilling way. How many people in the world, how many people here can say that fully? But that's really what we should be doing. We should be living completely, fully. The only way to do that is in the Lord, according to Paul, Ephesians 6:10. So when we walk with Him and we're in Him and He's in us, then we have a fullness and a completeness. Now I will return to fight with the prince of Persia. When I go forth, the prince of Greece shall come. He wanted to make sure Daniel understood the message that he had given. So the war against evil forces would continue with Greece under the Macedonian opposition, followed by the conflict then with Antiochus Epiphanes. And he said, "No one opposed me except Michael, your prince." That was what I really meant to say. I misquoted before. All right. So the writing of truth in 10:21, we could make a lot of suppositions. I think this is from McGigan. I think he's probably right. I will tell you that which is inscribed in the writing of truth, probably a figure of speech for God's eternal purpose, which includes the victory for truth and all the conflicts met by His people. Revelation 5:1, you find the scroll. Who is worthy to open the scroll and loose its seals? Very likely a similar sort of reference. Therefore, all the efforts of the Satan and his angels are doomed to fall, because God's will is going to be done. In the immediate conflict, we find that, we've said that repeatedly, the leaders of war with Satan would stand with him, but they would lose. All right, and that's the story of Revelations, is that ultimate victory is the Lord's. We're going to move to Daniel 11, and it's a story of warfare and intrigue, blasphemies, conquest, the kings of the north and the south. Every bit as good as the Civil War. Probably a lot better. A lot worse in many ways, a lot more wicked. Daniel 11 is perhaps the most specifically detailed prophecy in the entire Bible. And that's not a lot, because there are some other passages that are also very detailed. The specific details serve a purpose. They validate the prophecy. So much so that Daniel, and I think we've said that before, that Daniel, many had tried to move Daniel to having been written in the 200s BC, because how on earth would he have been able to nail all these things so precisely? And yet all the evidence really does support Daniel writing in exactly the time frame. I mean, he certainly claims for himself that he was writing and when he was writing. So, but the prophecies of Christ were also detailed so sufficiently, no seeker of truth would have denied the applicability of the prophecy of Jesus. I think one of the things that we missed today a little bit, the seeking of truth, and I think we need to seek truth, whether it's spiritual truth, whether it's physical truth. We're not to lie, we're to tell the truth. One of the things destroying us as a country today is we've talked about, well, the other truth or my truth or all these other things, but there's truth, and there's truth almost in everything that we involve ourselves in. Here, truth is held out as being from God, and it is. All truth comes from God. Okay. So he listed 3 reasons why such a detailed prophecy. No specific details of the political nation's future had been previously given, its people, city, temple, the conflicts yet been revealed. So maybe this was given so he would have a better idea, Daniel would, of what was coming. He kept wanting to know, and not just Daniel, because his people would read this, right? All right, the fulfillment of these prophecies of specific historical events made 300 to 400 years earlier should be great faith builders. God fulfills His word. How do we know a true prophet? His prophecies come true. And you know, a broad prophecy that probably could fit almost anything proves nothing. But the more detailed it is, and then it comes true, then we should know fully. So Jesus came as predicted, now back to Christ. Lived as foretold, revealed God and taught as He did, was put to death as graphically described in Psalms 22 and Isaiah. The Jews should have believed the report of His resurrection, accepted Him as a Messiah. You would have thought, yet many of them did not. Now, we do the same thing today. All right, now I'm trying to get on forward. Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to use McGigan's, but he did a lot of what Haley did as well. But McGigan put these up in parallel, and I think what we're fixing to get into is just history. But it explains and shows parallel the prophecy and then what it was talking about. And I think that's probably the best way to approach this 11th chapter. So you're going to see he used the American Standard Version. Obviously, you probably know I typically use the New King James. It'll be on the left, and then on the right are going to be the comments. I hope I've still got that plenty big enough. Can y'all see that at the back? That's 24 font, which normally works. I got a nod. Good. Okay. So we start in verse 2. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. And when he is waxed strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. And boy, that's like kicking a hornet's nest when he did that. So in the paraphrase, I'm going to show you the truth. These are going to stand up yet, in addition to Cyrus, whose reign was already in the vision, Cambyses, Darius the first Hystaspes, and Xerxes, who shall be richer than they all. Now that Xerxes, Do you know what his other name was and why you find him elsewhere in the Bible? Ahasuerus, okay, and where is that? Book of Esther. That's Esther's husband we're talking about, okay? And he's the richest and mightiest of them all. Possibly because of that, the Greeks are kind of undermining him in the area of what is modern-day Turkey, I think it was. And there were some Greek colonies established there, and there had been some ongoing battling, and finally Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, decides, we're fixing to go take care of this, and he goes up, and they get into mighty warfare, which then results in Philip being able to pull together the Greek city-states that never could get along with each other. Philip from Macedonia, actually, and then Alexander, he was killed, and then Alexander's son comes in. So verse 3, a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Well, that was great dominion because he controlled all the way to India and then as far west as you would go, Thrace, Greece, not much further because actually those were all primitives beyond there. That was not really civilized people. So this was Alexander III of Macedon, 334 BC. Now, what year are we in, roughly, approximate, that this vision and this is being told to Daniel? But what year?
Approximately 200 years.
About 200 years before. 535, somewhere in that area, 534, 538, you can argue back and forth. So right at 200 years before that he's going to come along, right? Now notice, we got this down pretty well. There were 4 kings after Cyrus. The 4th was going to be mightier, richer than they all. He's going to stir up opposition in Greece. Greece couldn't even get along with himself. At this time frame, they were a bunch of city-states. They were civilized. They were well-known. A lot of we get a lot of philosophy and a lot of science and all from Greece, even in that time frame. But they couldn't get along with each other. And yet they were going to rise up. All right. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. That's this Greek king. And it shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, not according to his dominion wherewith he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides these. So at the height of his power, he will lose his power in his kingdom. How did that happen? He died. Okay? And he was how old? No, he's in his 30s, I think, but 34, 30, 33, 34 years old probably. Very young, okay? In his kingdom, what happened to him? Well, he had a wife and 2 children. Huh?
Went to his general, 4 generals.
And what happened to his kids? They murdered him. Okay. Some of his generals took care of his family, and they went to the 4 generals. Thank you. And so we find, which was primarily Roxana and Alexander IV. Alexander IV was, I think, 4 or 5 years old at that point. So, I don't know how you pronounce them, Lysimachus, Antipater, or Cassander, Seleucus the first, Nicator, and Ptolemy the first, Soter. All right, so that's Ptolemy is going to be the Egyptian. Seleucus is going to be up in the area of Syria, and then on around the coast on Turkey. All right. Their rule, however, will lack his success and power, and they will eventually lose the kingdom. All right. And I made a note there at the bottom that Xerxes was the Ahasuerus of of Esther. So the king of the south shall be strong in one of his princes, and shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So king of Egypt was Ptolemy first Soter, shall be strong. So will one of his generals, Seleucus first, who fled to him in 316 BC. All this shaking out of the generals, there was a pretty interesting story going on with all that, but it took a few years to shake out, and everybody ended up where they ended up. But Ptolemy I shall be stronger and have the rule. Now we get into the intrigue. And at the end of years, they shall join themselves together, and the daughter of the king, think about this, well over 200 years, before, at the end of years they shall join themselves together, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the strength of her arm, neither shall he stand nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in those times. Well, what does that mean? Sometime later, Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy II, shall marry, don't know what happened. Hope we can get it back. I'm trying to connect. Let's see. Here it comes. I got it. Okay. So, sometime later, Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy, hang on, let me get this out of the way. Can't do it. I may have to just try to work around that. All right, maybe we're there now. All right, so Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy II, shall marry the Seleucid king Antiochus II Theos, who divorced his first wife Laodicea. The arrangement will result in a loss to all concerned in it, because Laodicea poisons the king, Berenice, and her child. So look how closely that matched. Didn't work out. They all lost, and everybody involved got burned, except for Laodicea. All right, but out of the shoot from her roots shall one stand up in his place, who shall come into the army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. So, but a brother of hers, that's Berenice, Ptolemy III Euergetes, gains power and attacks the Seleucid king Seleucus II Callinicus, son of Laodicea, and is very successful in gaining much territory. And also their gods with their molten images and with their goodly vessels of silver and gold shall he carry captive into Egypt, and he shall refrain some years from the king of the north. So he returns, lives the rest of his life in a reign of peace. I know you have luxury, and he kind of enjoyed himself and didn't take care of things, so set them up for some future problems. And then a king of the north, in verse 13, shall return. Hang on. The king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former. And he shall come on, we're almost at the end, aren't we? At the end of times, even of years, with a great army and very much substance. So that's the one you probably have heard a lot about, Seleucid king Antiochus III, the Great, that's the father of the one you've heard about, shall raise another army greater than the first, and after some time he will attack again. And I've got it looking like we're right at 10:30. So we'll stop at this point. We'll finish this on out and get on down should get all the way through the 11th chapter, I think. No, we'll have it. We may not. It may take two. So, all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.